Good afternoon this time, and you're very welcome to the League of Ireland Women's Podcast here on finalwhistle.ie with myself, Breifne and Aaron, and of course, as always, ever present this season, Aaron Clark. Aaron, welcome back to the show.
It feels strange doing this on a Friday afternoon, especially considering there's no games tomorrow. Feels
Yeah,
really weird.
it's really weird, isn't it? Of course, no League of Ireland over the last 10 days or so because we've been busy talking about European Championship qualification with the women's national team. We talked about this 10 days ago when we kind of previewed these two games, Aaron, and we said we didn't think it'd be 20-0 aggregate, but that it would be relatively comfortable. 9-0 feels about right in terms of where these two teams are at. Or should we have done more? We could have definitely scored more over the two legs.
Probably should have done more. Probably should have won by a lot more comfortably considering the sheer volume of possession, chances, things like that. But the other side of it is, and it's you look at it from a different perspective of when we're playing against the likes of France, Sweden, England. We're playing a very similar sort of style to Georgia in the sense of it's try have them low blocks, not let them in behind, not let them get at us and that sort of stuff. So it was interesting to see how Ireland sort of adapted and dealt with it, having to go onto the front foot. The one thing you'll say was probably evident is the fact that playing against a higher opposition where you're not expected to do it and then having to go on that definitely took Ireland quite a while to adjust. Did they properly adjust and take advantage of it? I'd say no, but the problem with these sort of games is the class of opposition that you're playing. Like it's difficult to go out in these sort of games and just look good against the likes of a Georgia. Like you look at the first half in Tbilisi, I started thinking, is this going to be a 1-2-0 game? Second half, Ireland sort of opened up. Likewise in Tala, if they could have took one or two of them chances in the early second half, early in the first half of the second leg, probably could have been 4 or 5 up at halftime. And you're probably talking about a different game. But I think for me, the biggest thing was just to get through these games with no suspensions, no real injuries, because that's probably what you're looking at, because it was always going to be the second round of playoffs where things really get meaningful. Because no disrespect to Georgia, but no one would have given Georgia a chance of beating Ireland over two legs or even over one leg.
Yeah, no, that first half in Tbilisi is probably the good place to start because we did struggle to break them down. We created chances, couldn't find the back of the net. It took a penalty was the only way we could actually get on the score sheet in that particular game. But Ireland could have been 5 or 6-0 up at halftime. Were you getting concerned that wasn't going to be quite the cakewalk we had anticipated?
Yes. Like you look at some of the chances in particular, like they were going closer headers. I think Abby Larkin's chance before the penalty was probably the best, and where she just doesn't get it on target from close range. I was started thinking, speaking to another journalist actually during the game, I was like, this nearly has a 1-0 written all over. And then you could nearly feel the air of relief when Katie scores the penalty, just that the goal had gone in to give the lead. Like you could see Ireland getting visibly frustrated with Georgia taking the time. You could see the Ireland players sort of have a word with the officials just to say, come on, speed it up. The interesting thing about this game is I think when you look at it, like the referee gave a yellow card to a Georgia player within the first 2 or 3 minutes for a foul, and you're sort of thinking, okay, is this the way this game is going to go? And it sort of didn't materialize in terms of some of the fouls or some of the stuff that was happening. But when Ireland got into the dressing rooms at 1-0, the one thing that was very evident for me is it was too slow. If I was to be critical of Eileen Gleeson over the two legs, the one thing I would say that I didn't like is the fact that there is absolutely no need to have 3 centre backs on in a game like this and sort of having 3 centre backs in your own half. I would have likened to see you seen it in the second half against Georgia at home where she took one of them off and then she pushed Jessie Stapleton for the back of her. I would have likened her to see sort of just you get no real threats there. Have the 2 centre backs and then have, if you want to still play with the 2 wing backs, that's fine. But there was no need to have 3 back there. And I just thought when Ireland tried to move the ball, it just wasn't quick enough. It wasn't fast enough. And that's really what caught them out in the first half. Deliveries into the box worked very well for them. Like majority of the goals came from either crosses or free kicks into the box. And I thought second half was much better for sure in Tbilisi. But like when the tie is at 6-0, you sort of know it's game over. Like if we look at the goals, I know me and you were chatting a little bit off air before we started. Like the second goal for me, it's a lovely flick from Ciara Caruso at the near post. Good run from Abby Larkin. The third goal from Katie McCabe is sublime.
Well, with an asterisk, it's a great goal, but like goalkeeper doesn't even put her hands up to save that, and then almost like gesture for her teammates is in like going, well, what happened there? Kind of thing. It's like, put your hands up, love. Take a couple of steps back. It's not like she didn't have time to see that coming in. I don't know what was going through her head.
Katie should not be allowed to shoot from there. Absolutely no way be allowed to shoot. She should not be allowed to shoot from there. And then as the game continues to go on, we then see a string of 3 goals where it's first international goals for Jessie Stapleton. We'll talk about Jessie Stapleton's one first. I think the biggest thing that everybody was confused over what was going on with VAR was a 5-6 minute delay. We spoke to Eileen Gleeson after the game. I did, and she was saying to the media that it seemed as though the cameras weren't working or something, that whoever was looking at the VAR wasn't able to see any of them, and that's what sort of led to the delay. And then Aoife Mannion with the last goal, the header right in full time. But I think the one goal I do want to spend a bit of time talking about, and I actually want to spend a bit of time talking about this player in general for over the 2 legs. Marissa Shiva's finish was superb, and she cut in off the throw in, and it was a really, really nice finish. But I think for me, the biggest thing about this is it's the fact that Marissa scored this goal. Marissa was rewarded for the performance that she put in with the start against in the second leg, and she's somebody who was made a scapegoat in the World Cup very unfairly. We've had many conversations about that penalty incident in Sydney. I think there's 4, maybe 5 different things that led to that penalty as well. Marissa was just the last person on that chain, and she was the one who was sort of made to feel that it was on her. And I'm glad to see that she got back into the Ireland squad. I'm glad to see that she's, how would you say, got back into the team. Like, this is her first appearance since the World Cup. She was in the squad for the first 2 games. Didn't make the matchday squad for, I don't know, can't remember if she made the matchday squad for the Northern Ireland game, but she definitely didn't make the matchday squad for Hungary in Budapest, and wasn't in the squad for any other games. And to come back in sort of the last camp of the last double header when she came in for the England and France game, didn't play in either. You sort of thought, is she going to stay? Is she going to go? Players coming and going, and then when she comes on,
another significant factor, she changed clubs in the off season, at the tail end of last year. But she went from the east coast of the States to the west coast of the States. Now, we kind of look at the US as being the US, but ultimately it's doubling her travel time. So for her, and I suppose it applies to Kira Caruso as well. For Kira Caruso moving from London to San Diego, it turns a 1 hour commute to camp into a 15-16 hour commute at times. And the same for Shiva. We've talked about Marissa at length in the last 18 months. She was scapegoated by unfairly, as you've said, by Vera Pauw after that. Almost cut aside, and it kind of fed into the way she was treated in the first few sessions under Eileen as well, because as you said, she didn't really feature in those first couple of games. She didn't come off the bench and then left out for the guts of her 12 months. She's back in form. She's back playing a little bit with Portland, not a starter by any means, but she's getting game time. Opened her account with a goal, a well-worked goal for them a couple of weeks back, and has been in the last couple of Ireland squads. And you know what? I don't think it's accidental that she came on just before the hour mark in the first game at 1-0, and it went to 6. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that's accidental. She scored an absolute belter of a goal, and I think if the roles had been reversed, if Katie had scored that goal, that'd be the one we were talking about rather than the one from distance. I think it's a better goal.
I agree with you. I think the more the Katie goal looks great because the fact that the keeper's off her line and she's not expecting Katie to shoot from there. But like, I do think while we are praising Marissa, I think Marissa will be the first to put her hand up as well and say, she needs to make that move to get more game time, to get back in. And like, when you listen to what she says around getting back into the Ireland camp, she talks about just having to put her head down, work hard, and sort of continue to grow as a person and a player. Like, I think she will be disappointed when you look at the second leg. The chance that she missed when Julianne Russell scored the first goal. Marissa's initial shot was saved, but I think she had a really, really good game again. And I think that's important for me, is the fact that like she took that opportunity, and like, because a lot of people probably said we'll never see her again. She'd be happy just that she got her Ireland cap, but like, she was one of these sort of players who was going through this process long before she sort of got called by she got in touch with Rear Power after she, when she got her citizenship before. So she'd done all that before. It wasn't as if she just like, I'll get Irish citizenship. Like, I like Marissa. I have a lot of time for. I think she comes across very well when she speaks to the media, and like it's not nice when you see the situation that happens, and like Sydney. And when you look back at Sydney, there's so much more Ireland could have done in that game against Australia to get something out of that game. Like it's one that will be frustrating, but I'm just glad to see that she got that chance and she done well in that game. Like even Kira Caruso as well. I was a little bit unsure what was going to happen with Kira this camp because the fact that Leanne had played so well alongside Julianne, and again when they come on against England and then in Porky Queeve, I was convinced sort of she's going to start Leanne again up top. But I think you could really see in a game like this what Kira's value was in the terms of the way she was able to hold the ball up, bring the other players in. This is probably the first time in a while we've seen Katie McCabe a little bit higher as well. In the second leg, she started further forward. The one thing I would say, if I'm being a little bit critical of Eileen, is we could have seen all of these sort of combinations in League B last year. That was the opportunity, whereas now she's sort of in a situation where players are coming in because players are playing well, and whereas she would have had an opportunity to look at these players last year, but she didn't really take. I get the understanding of, get back to League A, the significance because it gives you a playoff into the Euros, but like with League B, we promotion assured after 4 games. Like there was 2 games left in that group where we could have played different players, and like it's just one of them that I would have liked to see a little bit more, where now she's sort of being forced to do it because injuries and stuff like that, where she didn't take the opportunity to do it. Don't get me wrong, some of these players who've come in have stepped up, have had good performances. Like you look at it, I thought Abby Larkin was very good and was very good in the first leg. I thought Jessie Stapleton in the home game, the flick was sublime for Kira. Sort of said to Kira after interviewing her the other day when we were just finished, I said, if you'd have missed that, I said you wouldn't have heard the end of it just because of that flick that's going around. But like for me, like it's job done, Breifne, in terms of that. But I think the second half of the first leg was probably the best portion of the football. Second leg wasn't great. Like, let's be honest, again, it was too slow. It was
the job is done at that point. Do you know what I mean? Like 6-0. A team from like Georgia are not coming back from 6-0 down. We could have put out a second 11 and still comfortably qualified. Like no Georgia team was beating that side 6-0.
I need to call out the referee in this game.
Okay.
6 seconds not even 6 seconds into the game, 3 seconds into the game, one of the Georgia players is nearly doing a wrestling move on Katie McCabe and it kicks off, and like some of the blatant pushes and stuff like that. And I asked Eileen after the game, and I said, "What, like, did you discuss this? Because obviously with the yellow cards from the first camp or the first phase gone now, and we've seen that's why Courtney was suspended for the game for the first leg. But the worry of getting the yellow card in either this game or the first leg, and then picking up a second one in the second leg in the first leg, the next playoff, and missing the last game." She said they had about 20 meetings to discuss, expecting a lot of this sort of tactics from Georgia, and just being like, no yellows, no silly things. I think that's probably part of the reason why Tyler Toland didn't play, because she picked up the yellow in Tbilisi as well, that you didn't want her really to get another one. Whereas, because no disrespect to Georgia, but you're going into Wales next. But I understand from an Ireland viewpoint as to why the performance here today wasn't where it should be, because as you say, 6-0 up, it's difficult to sort of get through that game when you just want to get through unscathed and you're more focused on just coming through with a clean bill of health and stuff like that. It's difficult to sort of not necessarily be motivated, but be firing on full cylinders in a game like that.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. I think it's very difficult to kind of say, I'm going to put 110% into this game, knowing that it really has little to no impact, and it's the injuries and the avoiding injuries is the biggest issue. Now that we've firmly got Marissa Shiva back in the conversation after our, I suppose, representations on this platform for the last 18 months, who's next on our hit list to kind of push to be in the next squad? My vote goes to Hayley Nolan at this stage. I know she's out injured, has shoulder injury. Don't quite know when she's going to return to play. Hopefully in the new year sometime. Could she be a shout to get into that squad? Because if you're looking at the makeup of the Irish squad now, particularly in defence, where Hayley has excelled for Palace and for the Lionesses for the last couple of seasons, we have a huge depth of talent there, and Jessie Stapleton's taken a claim for that as well. But when you look at the age profile, Niamh Fahey, Louise Quinn, Darren Caldwell, none of them getting any younger. They're all still involved in the squad. Will we see them still be involved at this level in 12 months' time, or when we get to if and when we get to European Championships? Not that I want to retire anybody, but like, yeah, that's what I'm saying, basically.
I'm not convinced. Like, you look at Louise, obviously missed her injury. Niamh and Diane were named on the bench for the second leg, but neither of them actually talked out. They were both there in pair runners, so they weren't necessarily fully fit. I think realistically, if you're looking the way things are going right now, when players are fully fit, it's hard to say that Patton, Hayes, and Mannion probably aren't our first choice at the minute. So, like, you're looking at it now where the days that it used to be Quinn, Caldwell, and Fahey were there and nailed on. I think them days are gone. I'd say Louise probably would come back into it, but like, even to look at some of the games in the group earlier in the year, where I think it was Sweden away, where she wasn't afraid to pull one of them off because she said it wasn't going well. She pulled Louise off. Like, I don't think them days of these players being nailed on are there anymore. I'm going to burst a bubble.
Okay.
I don't think Hayley Nolan ever gets back into the Ireland squad. I don't think she will. Do I agree with it? Probably not. I think Hayley Nolan is probably one of the most unlucky players not to have been given a proper opportunity in the last 2 or 3 years. You look at, she missed the World Cup. She was in every squad up until the World Cup in all the qualifiers, and then wasn't picked into the World Cup squad. I think Hayley, since making that change to centre back from centre midfield, has probably come on tenfold at least and continues to get better. I just find it difficult to see how she's going to get back in there, considering she wasn't really given much of a look in at that sort of stage. Like, I would say, if you're without Fahey, Quinn, and Caldwell, she could potentially sneak back in on a good day, but it just seems as though she's potentially not the sort of player who Eileen Gleeson tends to favour. I disagree. I'd like to see her there. I 100% agree with you in terms of championing for someone like Hayley Nolan. I think Hayley, take the injury out of it that she's had at the minute. I think she played nearly every minute last year for Palace. She played nearly every minute the year before for London City Lionesses. She's been so consistent in that championship for the last couple of years, and like, it's just startling to think, how long it's been, or it's been that long since she's got an Ireland cap, and like, I don't get it, but managers like certain players.
I can't get my head around that as well, because even just on a sheer numbers basis, like, take the emotion out of it, take the personalities out of it, like, Hayley Nolan was ever present in a team that won the championship, that all of our other defenders are nearly almost our other defenders are actually currently playing in. So on every metric, she should be ahead of at least half of our current squad. Like, Louise Quinn was in that competition last year, didn't play every game for Birmingham, didn't win the league, obviously.
Stapleton was there in the second half of the season with Reading.
So, like, how can she not even be in the top 6 options?
But then again, the other side of it is, and no disrespect to Caitlin on this, is Celtic aren't anywhere near the level of even the championship clubs, and she's the number one centre backs that's nearly always picked. Like, I think a lot of it over with Ireland over the last number of years. It's you even see it with the men at times. It's sometimes selections and squads tend to leave you asking more questions than you'll ever get an answer for, and I don't think we'll ever get the full reason as to why Hayley Nolan hasn't been given an opportunity, especially when she's been involved in the likes of that Palace team that have been doing so well.
Let's talk about Wales now. They came through that qualification final themselves against Slovakia. Probably not expected to do so. I think we kind of had predicted that it would be Slovakia would be facing Slovakia.
I thought it'd be Wales. I prefer Slovakia because Slovakia is a better trip. But in terms of world ranking, I thought it would be Wales. Like, I watched parts of the game, the second leg of the game, and like, when they come through when it gets that first leg, Slovakia are 2-0 up, you're sort of thinking, okay, Wales are in trouble. Then they get a late goal to pull one back in Slovakia, and going to Cardiff. Then, like, once Wales scored first, you sort of knew it probably would be Wales. But probably the surprising thing in that game is the fact that it took Wales took Wales to take them all the way to extra time to get that second goal to actually seal that game off. And like you look at the caliber that Wales team, the likes of Jess Fishlock playing in that, I think they're definitely going to be a tough opposition. The interesting thing is the first leg is away from home. Like in this playoff, because Ireland are the higher seeded team through the competition, they get the second leg at home. Friday night in Cardiff. Like, I think from this sort of game, Ireland need to be switched on in this first leg, because we've seen when they played against Wales earlier in the year, yes, there was things you can take away from that in terms of when Niamh Fahey sort of pulls out injured in the warm-up and Diane Caldwell goes in. I thought defensively that night Ireland were so poor. They struggled massively. I think Ireland have definitely got more of a squad depth now in terms of players that to choose from than they did from them, because you look at even then, Julianne Russell wouldn't have been there, Leanne Kiernan wouldn't have been there, Marissa Shiva wouldn't have been there. There's like 4 or 5 players who probably wouldn't have been getting game time that probably would now. Your only concern for Ireland in these sort of games is if Ireland go a goal down, we haven't really shown that massive tactical change or that tactical nous to sort of go and get a game or get a win. Like you see against England, it was bringing on Julianne and Leanne, but it was still sort of a similar shape. There wasn't a major shape change. The old traditional of put someone like Louise Quinn up top, it doesn't work. I don't like it. I think realistically, if Ireland are gonna get past Wales, Ireland are gonna have to be very well prepared, very well able to change and adapt. And the sort of, I think realistically, that first leg, you probably have to come home from Cardiff with at least a draw on that first leg. You wouldn't want to be going back to the Aviva chasing any sort of deficit. Yes, you'll have an Irish fan base there, but I'm going to throw this question to you, Breifne. What sort of crowd are you going to get for the Aviva for that game? Because my biggest concern about this is the game in Tala was on a school holiday. The game in Páirc Uí Chaoimh was on a school holiday. This game is not on a school holiday week. This game is on a regular Tuesday evening, early December.
Yeah, but I think you have to start looking at big games, putting them in the Aviva. I think we have to look at. I know people who would have gone to that game on Tuesday, had they been able to get tickets on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to. I would have been a fan of putting the Ireland game in the Aviva last week. I think we would have filled it in terms of what needs to be there. And I think it's a bigger issue than a corporate financial issue. I think it needs to be seen to be an equality between the two teams, even if they don't bring in the same numbers in terms of sponsorships and viewerships. But I think for big games like that, it could be the story of the month, effectively, and even of the year, if that Ireland team go and qualify for European Championships. We saw the impact Scotland made. Will we have the same impact if we get to a European? First of all, it's a European versus world. There's a slight downgrade there, although it doesn't really matter. It's probably a harder competition to win. And on top of that, it's our first time doing it again. So it's going to get another big impact. We saw the impact that it had on not just the Ireland team, but on the careers maybe of Amber Barrett and kind of the profile of Amber Barrett in particular when she scored that goal. Who will that be the next time if we are to succeed? It'll be in Dublin. Would we have got that audience if the table had been reversed and we were looking at that Scotland game and playing them at home? We probably would have got a big audience at that as well. So I think we have to do it in the Aviva. I think anything above 20,000 people at it will be a success story. I think we will get that. I think it's big enough that if you're a parent or a coach of young girls, you'll be saying, come on, we're going to the Aviva. We're going to go as a club. We're going to go as a team. Or I'm going to go as a parent and I'm going to bring you and we're going to leave school early for the day. We're going to go to Dublin for the night. It's that big an event. If you've got a girl in your life, whether she's a player you're coaching or a daughter, that you will say, I want you to be exposed to these moments because this will be one of the historic moments. Win or draw, win or lose. Like it'll be an historic moment. A lot will depend. If we come back with a draw or a 1-goal deficit from the first game, it's game on the following week in the Aviva Stadium. But I think it's something that it's an event that people will want to go to. Those we've both been to games in the Aviva with the women's. It's a different atmosphere than the men's. Even if you're only opening the lower tier and filling that, go with it. I think it's the potential to be a phenomenal night. And I think parents, like I wouldn't say take your kid out of school, but I think it's an event and a kind of a life experience for young girls to see other Irish girls doing something extraordinary. And I think it's an event worth considering making sacrifices to bring your kid to and show her that, because we go back to the old hashtag of can't see, can't be. And I think it's important for young girls, particularly those that are into football, to see these girls excelling and doing it and seeing that pathway to themselves being in that role in 5, 10, or even 15 years. I think it's key. And I think we need it on the best stage we have. And while Tala's phenomenal, it just can't cope with what I expect if we can fill Tala for Georgia, even in a school holiday, we can fill it for Wales, local derby, more on the line, more competitive, and a chance to really create a great night. We did it against Scotland 2 years ago. I can't see why we can't do it against Wales this time.
I remember that night in Glasgow. It was just one of them. Courtney Brosnan saves, Caroline Weir's penalty, and you started thinking, okay, we could have something here. And there was so many different stories that night in Scotland because of the fact that, from the media side of things, we were following the results of the other games that on that night to see, okay, if Ireland win, are they going to the playoff in New Zealand in February, or are they going straight to the World Cup? And then when things start to fall into place, you're sort of like, okay. And then when Amber Barra puts that ball in the net, you still have to remember, especially the tragedies that we had a couple of days previous in Creaslop, Amber being from Donegal, and I think it was an emotional charged night, and to qualify for our first major senior competition, it was massive, and to have that opportunity to do it again in Dublin this time for me is huge. And I think realistically, like what you've said there, is you would hope that people take this opportunity and sort of be like, okay, let's go and do it. Let's go to it. Yes, granted, the timing is not ideal on the Tuesday night, but I think this country is great when it comes to sporting events and getting behind our own. I think realistically, if we could get up to the 30 odd thousand, especially if this game is close, that could be the difference between qualifying and not qualifying, and sort of keeping it tight. I expect in terms of Cardiff City, Cardiff had, I think they 10 or 11,000 at the game the other night against Slovakia. I expect them a decent traveling Irish fans to go to Cardiff on the Friday evening, and a lot of them will be there. The thing is, the FAI have already started. The tickets went on general sale this morning, so they've gone on price reasonably enough. I think they started at I think for an adults ticket they start at 25. They start at 25 euro, and kids I think are a tenner. That for a women's international, the fact that the easy options to say if they're looking at it from a financial thing is, we're going to the Aviva, let's make them a little bit more expensive. They haven't. I think they've kept the same sort of prices that they had for the League A and Nations League games as well, which is important. And anybody who was, as you say, at them games, the England game was a superb evening, and the Sweden game was brilliant as well. Even the Northern Ireland game last year, I think that was the first one, and that was sort of the first time they got there. The experience of, if we could qualify for Euros on home soil, I think it'd just be massive. I do have a concern about it being in the Aviva, okay, and it's not financial, it's not anything to do with that. I'd just be interested to hear what your thoughts on it. I have a concern over the pitch in the Aviva, for the simple fact that we've got, I think there's a men's home international coming up as well soon. There's four autumn rugby internationals.
Yeah.
There's the FAI Cup final. Ireland played the last of the autumn internationals against Australia the Saturday beforehand. You just sort of hope the pitch is okay, become the end of 4 big rugby games at this time of the year. But for me, it's just a massive occasion.
Yeah, I think it, as much as you want it to be played on the best surface possible, I think you have to allow for that. I think it's a multi-sport stadium. It's a multi-use stadium. It's just going to be a situation where we have to just kind of dwell on the fact that it's about getting the crowd in the gate. It's about showcasing the talent that's on the pitch. It's about that the pitch is going to be what the pitch is going to be. I have no doubt that the ground staff in the Aviva, who always turn out so well, will have it looking as good as it possibly can. Yeah, if it rains the week before in the, I think it's Australia is the last game of the home internationals.
Yeah, Australia's on the Saturday.
It's going to be a pretty bleak 8 or 9 days to get that ready for the following Tuesday week. But miracles do happen, and I think it's important to be in that setting. Though it is so important.
Yeah, I agree. And like the easy option for the FAI is to say, let's just stick it in Tala. Let's just stick it in 10,000 in the 10,000 seater in Tala. Like, to me, I don't mean to sound bad about this, but Tala is a disaster. Tala is a disaster in the sense of infrastructure. No, in terms of infrastructures, in terms of getting in and out of the stadium, because of where it's like, I don't think Tala is great for getting in and out. And when you have a big crowd, when you have a crowd of 10,000 there, you can be sort of difficult getting in and out. And whereas I think the Aviva gives you that more options when you have more fans there. I think Tala's a great stadium. Tala's a fantastic stadium, but I just think from an infrastructure point of view, big crowds, I don't think Tala's great for. Whereas I think with the Aviva, the fact you can easily disperse the people in so many different directions and stuff like that, and like the Aviva, you've all the transport networks to get into there. Like, I just think everything is set up, and if you're in any way doubts, I think just buy a ticket, jump on it. You won't regret it. Like, even when it comes to, it'd be interesting to see what the number of sales are after the first leg, if they spike, because depending on the result in the first leg, like, it's going to be difficult going to Cardiff. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be difficult, but I think the fact that there's a short turnaround from this camp to the next camp, like, you look at, it's literally only 4 weeks today to the first leg. It's not very long until that first leg, so it's a quick turnaround time. You just sort of hope that players aren't going to get injured and pick up any knocks from that clubs. Interesting enough, I was chatting to Julianne Russell the other day. I sort of said to her, like, what's she gonna do, because she's herself and Eve Mangan will be the two completely different in terms of season, that they're currently out of season. And Julianne was saying she's going to train with the boys in Salt Hill just to keep her sharpness, and the fact that they're more physical and stuff like that. She said she's going to train with them to help keep her going. And I think you can see even the commitment from things like from the likes of Julianne to sort of say, okay, I need to be in the best shape possible going into these games, because realistically, Breifne, you look at, we've only ever made the playoff once before for the Euros, and that's when Iceland beat us. I think it was 2009, 2010, around that time. So it's been a long time coming, and I think that's why when you get these sort of days, you sort of have to cherish them and sort of, appreciate them, because back when that last playoff would have been played, no disrespect to the players who would have been playing there, but you would have only had friends and family, a handful of fans coming to these sort of games, whereas now these players on the pitch inspire the next generation. As you say, you can't see, you can't be. So if you're inspired by the next generation of players, you're going to be onto your parents, you're going to be onto your friends. And I think that's where women's football has changed in the last number of years, is that we've gone from being at a stage where struggling to get people in the door, having to nearly throw tickets away for free to get people to even come to games. I remember being at a game in Tala Stadium, it was against Spain in a qualifier, and it was like a 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock kickoff in the afternoon. And the FAI were nearly helping at that stage to cover the cost of buses from clubs from around the country just to get some fans into Tala. I think there was 1,000 fans in Tala that day. Whereas now, as you said, you said the other day, you'd have people who would have went to the game if they could have got tickets. People are scrambling for tickets, trying to get their hands on. And it's great to be involved in the sport where there's now a case that people want to be there, people want to go, and people are willing to pay to go and watch it. There's no more this free tickets all around, or €5 tickets, like €25 for an adult ticket. We're starting to get to a stage now where we're starting to put a proper value onto women's football.
Game is sustainable now. Like, if we can get 3 or 4 home games, €25 ticket, where you've got maybe 10,000 adults coming through the gate, that's $250,000 a match. Put in another maybe 25,000 €10 tickets for kids, which is probably a realistic ratio in terms of the breakdown. That's another $250,000. So you're talking about bringing in $500,000 3 or 4 times a year,
without even talking about if they open sweet shops. Like, I don't know about you, but have you ever taken a walk around the Aviva when there's a women's game on?
Oh, it's chock-a-block.
The shops are 5 times busier. Yes, they're not selling alcohol. They're not really selling alcohol, but the shops are 5 times busier for the sweets, hot dogs, that sort of stuff.
There's more markup, I'd say, on the sweets and minerals than there is on the alcohol in most of those stadiums. So no, absolutely, it's a merchandising dream, because these girls want jerseys, they want hot dogs, they want whatever it is that they can get their hands on at games. You see it even at League of Ireland grounds. For the younger audience, like I'm talking maybe primary school age, 6, 7 to 12, they're not that interested in the sport. They're there for the event. They're there for their friends. They want a distraction, and they'll drag mammy away to go and look at what's in the shop during the game. They don't really care. And I don't mean that's a negative. They will eventually develop those, or they won't. But it's about generating that interest, getting them in the jersey, getting them in the scarf, getting them in whatever it is they can get them into in the shops. And of course, it's all money. But I think if we can ring fence that for not just the international team, but also for the women's game as a whole, particularly invested in the Women's League of Ireland, the future for the women's game in this country is bright. And we have that opportunity now in the next 5 years to really promote what's happening here at home, both the junior level, juvenile level, and the senior level in the League of Ireland women's division, is to actually invest in those clubs and create this platform through the academies and through the first teams, where we can see these players given a really good chance at survival here in Ireland. If we decide to go down the route, and unfortunately I think we may, with certain pushes, be heading to push girls into England or other countries, I think that's going to be a negative on where we are at the moment. I think there are players playing with Irish heritage, either born here and moved to England to play, who could be getting as comfortable a lifestyle here playing football as they are getting in the championship in England or lower leagues. We have a couple of girls who are stars in this division now playing in tier 3 in the UK. Like Gemma McGuinness 2 years ago went to Bournemouth. They're in tier 2. There's Jess Hennessy and
they're still in tier 3 actually.
Sorry, no, they're in tier 4. They're in tier 4.
Oh wow, I thought it was 3.
Yeah, they're tier 4. Tier 3 is
Hennessy and Casey Howe have gone to are in tier 3 Forest.
At Forest, of course, it's a well-known name, and we have to remember that the top 2 tiers only have a small number of clubs. They're not 20-team divisions or 24-team divisions like the men. I think it's 12 and 12 off the top of my head.
It's 12 and 12, or it's
12 and 10.
12, no, it's 12 and I think it's
11.
12 and 11 because with Reading pulling out, there was no. But so like even
effectively, that's the same number that are in the Premier League in the men's side. So you could make an argument that tier 3 is effectively tier 2 numbers wise in terms of where they rank in the overall ladder. But at the same time, it's outside of the professional ranks. And I think it's important that we get these girls comfortable to play in Ireland, and for support that, and through education, through work opportunities, through opportunities within the game, or funding from within the game. But if you're taking a pot of 2 million before you get a sponsor, there's money there to develop these clubs. There's money there to develop the academies. Maybe not to the level the academies would like or the clubs would like, but there's definitely opportunities there through scholarships, through funding, through facilities, through coaching. It all has to come in there. And I do believe that we have a really good team in the League of Ireland at the moment. I think you got to look at the work that's been done by Mark Scanlon and his team, and there's a very good core team there that seem to have the right idea of how the league should be developed.
I was literally just about to bring up something there. I don't know, because I know you've been busy this week. I don't know if you've seen the report that came out this week from BDO.
I did, yeah. Phenomenal. Absolutely
phenomenal. Like, for them to say that 164.7 million revenue generated from the League of Ireland. Like, if you think about that, even if the Women's League could generate 1%, 2%, or 3% of that going forward, you know what I mean? Massive money that could.
You have to remember, and a lot of that is actually generated purely off, like, take into consideration if a female team have 10 away fixtures like they do in the league, throw in a couple of cup games, maybe 12 times they're traveling, 13 times they're traveling, they're hiring a bus. That bus is putting fuel in it. So the bus company is making money and paying taxes on it. The fuel company is paying money and making money paying taxes on it. That's where all this money comes from. Never mind before you even get to the supporter level. The supporter level is brilliant, and it really does scale things up massively. But even just the core business of running an academy, like we've heard clubs talk about how they can't run an academy for less than 150, 200 grand in terms of senior national team and 2 underage teams for the women's side of the game. It's great to hear those kind of numbers, but most of that, a lot of that, is either direct taxation or secondary taxation that builds into that number. The money comes back, and that's before you even potentially include the benefits to the health budgets in a decade's time or 5 decades time.
I don't know if you've seen this. Have you seen the yoke that's happened with Shamrock Rovers in the last week or two?
Phenomenal. Again, another thing.
The two sort of thing, like, because that's now telling for anybody who had.
I might explain it for people who might not be familiar with it. Basically, through a former League of Ireland player, Owen Doyle and Danny Ventry, who set up Lily's childcare facility, turning club events or club facilities that are unused for the most part in all our parishes around the country, Gaelic, rugby, soccer, you name it, into childcare facilities and generating income for the clubs, but also providing a fantastic community service. I think they were involved in this concept, but Shamrock Rovers have effectively turned their underage academies into childcare facilities, and they will get between $200 and $350 per person per hour for those child, depending on the family circumstances of each child, into that. Now, that's invaluable money. If they've been investing a couple of million a year or even $1 million a year into their academy, now it's like the government is subsidizing the cost of that. Families have to pay less, the club have to finance less. And it's still providing that phenomenal facility. I can see them scaling it out. I can see them becoming kind of two-tier, where it's just pure after-school care for as many kids that want to show up. Effectively a summer camp every day after school from 3 to 6, but also then having their elite academies as part of that as well. And I think it's a game changer. And I think clubs need to look at that as revenue models. You're not just active for 2 hours on a Friday night and an afternoon women's game on a Saturday. That's not how it works anymore. You've got to bring in cash from your merchandising, from your sponsors, from your partnerships, from your facilities, because there's 168 hours in a week, I think. 168 hours in a week. It's no good if you're only bringing in money 2 or 3 of those hours. You need to have better opportunities, and stuff like little coffee shops and shops and merchandise shops open during the day. If you've got a childcare facility on site and you've got staff around anyway, all of a sudden you get greater options in terms of ticket sales, merchandise sales. There should be a full-time gym in every ground, with a high performance gym and a public gym, same staff running them. These things are important. We need to look at the holistic side of football as a business. It's not just good enough to go, oh, well, it's not really business, it's football anymore. Somebody's going to fund that. We're going to get a sugar daddy. We got to get self-sufficient. Otherwise, we'll never grow.
But like, this is open to every club. That's the great thing about this. Every club can learn off this from Shamrock Rovers and like, even they're talking about extending it out to 15 to 18-year-olds when they get approved. Like, they're going to have paid coaches, paid people. Like, more people are going to be paid to be involved in sport as well. I think that's the massive thing, and it's more coaching opportunities. We've seen even in the last 2 weeks with the FAI announcing sort of the international player pathway for coaching, with the likes of Stephanie Zamber, Anya O'Gorman and Rihanna Jarrett sort of helping out with the under 17s, 19s, and being involved. I think one of them was in around the senior setup as well, to help them sort of transition into coaching. Like, it's great that there's these more opportunities, but the only way we will ever get this opportunity to build at an elite level is if you have your academies built up to that you can build the standard from the base up, from the bottom up, that then these players are getting better and better and better every year they come through. And then you'll be able to have more money involved in the leagues and have more investment, because realistically, like, some of the wages, and we spoke about situations at 1 or 2 clubs on this podcast before in the championship where the money is just not great. And the players are going away on poor enough money, but they see it as an opportunity and they see it as a chance to sort of get back into the Ireland squad. Like, we look at Alan Malloy, who's gone to Sheffield United recently. I'm delighted to see Alan sort of get back on the pitch for Ireland. I think I tweeted it was 788 days between international caps when she last played for Ireland against Slovakia in before the World Cup playoffs, before she picked up her ACL injury. Like, it's an opportunity with these sort of players, that if we have these facilities and we have these standards at home and we have something else to offer them, they will stay. They won't just jump unless it's a massive, massive opportunity. But right now, players are just going to keep going, because at the minute they see it as a potential better viable option. And I think we've done a lot of good work. I think the reports from BDO in the last week undertakes a lot of the good work that's been done. And I think you're right in what you said about the FAI League department. I think the FAI League department in the last couple of years, I think since Mark Scanlon has come in there, has probably come on about 7-8 fold compared to where it was previously. And you can see that was somebody who had invested interest in, even in college football, and when Mark was looking after the college's third level before moving into the League of Ireland side. And it's just people with a passion for the League of Ireland, and that's what's sort of driving that on. And I think that will help as well transcend to the women's side, because you see Mark Scanlon, that Mark Scanlon is always at women's games, nearly every weekend, or and it's not even when the TV cameras are there. It's when it could be just a game that he's available for, when not necessarily a top of the table clash. Could be, and he's there. He's there. He's talking to people. He's seeing what's going on, and that's somebody who has a vested interest in the league. And it's not just there because they're under the umbrella of the League of Ireland department. It's somebody, and that's what we need when it comes to women's football. It's people who are invested in it, who want to be there, who want to show and want to drive it on for further success. And I think realistically, we've seen a lot of improvements in the last couple of years, but as you say, next 5 years are vital.
100%. And I think one thing I've spoken to certain players about it at different stages over the last decade or so, I can't understand for the life of me why clubs themselves, like, fair enough, yeah, you want support from the governing body, but I think clubs themselves need to take some responsibility for where they are and their own patch, and providing their own identity in their own communities. And like, we see Gaelic games where we've games promotion officers going into these, I don't think they're called that anymore, but you know what I mean. They're going into the clubs and going into the school communities, and they're funded by HQ. But there's definitely opportunities there, particularly if you have a girl coming in and you're giving her a few quid to play semi-pro, like we know a couple of clubs are doing. These girls aren't coming across channel or across the Atlantic for nothing. And some of the Irish girls as well are getting a few quid in terms of expenses. But why not put that on a structured basis? Like, if you were to invest in one or two of these girls to actually come in and go around to primary schools, particularly in their local area, it has so many benefits. Not only are you getting these girls with a more structured lifestyle in terms of a day job that revolves around their football, but you're also getting these girls very, very valuable face time with the next generation of players. So you get a kid at 7 or 8 or 9 who's in a school, and somebody comes in through the door that she can see on TV, or she can see on the newspaper, or she can see on the internet, playing for Shelbourne or Shamrock Rovers or whoever it might be, Cork City, but she's coming to coach her. And so you partner them with really good coaches in the community. You generate a system where maybe there's an element of the user pays. Like, okay, the funding might not be there 100%, but I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that schools might contribute towards these players coming in and coaching across the season, or even that the parents might be asked to pay a euro or two per week for their kids to participate. And all of a sudden, you get a little bit of money from a couple of different sources. It's a viable opportunity. You could have 5 or 6 girls in Cork, for example, playing with Cork City, but doing this as their day job, going around in pairs or going around with other coaches and hitting every single school in the county every week. And all of a sudden you've got this huge swell of interest in the games because they feel like they know these players. It works so well in the GAA. Yes, they've got bigger budgets. Yes, they've got probably a greater local reach with their club network than might be existent in the Women's National League, but you have to start somewhere. And I think it's something you can grow. You could have, I'll take Cork as an example because I've used them. I've no background in looking at Cork, but you take women's clubs in each region and go, okay, we're going to send them in. What schools feed you? We're going to send these girls in. We're going to encourage them to go play with your local team at 8 or 9 or 10. But we also want you to then send us your best 2 players when they hit 14, 15 and come in and play with our 17s. And it becomes this cycle where, yeah, you might lose your best player at 14, or lose. I'd say lose in inverted commas. She moves on to a higher level. But at 19, if she's not able to make the grade or that step up to the first team, well, then she's going to come back and we're going to encourage her back to you again. So, yeah, you might lose 1 or 2 in that wash, but ultimately you're getting a more established player, greater experience, has played at a higher level, and is coming back to make your junior team a lot stronger going forward. And I think if we get a couple of generations of that, the girls who are currently maybe 8, 9, 10 fans of the game, have been exposed to the World Cup, maybe the European Championships next year, and you're talking down the line and you say, that girl, yeah, she was phenomenal. She came in at 15. She played with Cork City. She moved back out to Leaside or whoever it might be, Everton, and played with Douglas Hall. And now she's playing in the CWSSL and she's absolutely killing it for her team. And her team are competitive. And that top Premier Division is as good now as it used to be before any players went to the National League. And I think that's not beyond the realms of possibility. And I think with the new strategic plans that are coming out, that report you mentioned, I can't overstate how important that is. Yes, 99% of fans of the league will never even read it past the first page of the executive summary or whatever. And 80% won't even read the executive summary. But it's so important when you're going to government and you're going to funding organizations, whether it's UEFA or FIFA or the Irish government, Sports Council, whoever it might be, and saying, this is the plan, this is what we want, this is what we want to deliver back. And being able to throw out those figures of saying, well, actually, we got 5 million in funding last year, but we threw 160 million back into the economy. You give us 15 next year, we could put double that. It could actually be an add-on to the whole economy of the country by another 100 million. This is a solid investment by the government. And now we have that base. And I think it's important for us to kick on. I'm not quite sure how we ended up chatting about this when we really only came on to talk about 2 women's games in the European Championship last year. But I'm fascinated by this, and I think it's so good to see positive steps. So yeah, I did see that report, and I think it was phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is. I think it is important, and I think it's something that we're seeing an awful lot more. And even if you're just watching women's football from the outside, or reading stuff on social media, you will see a lot more of the work that's going in terms of the League of Ireland's cries for funding and support in terms of the academies, and these things definitely help. But I think realistically, if we can qualify for Euros next month, that's another added thing to help drive on. And I think the biggest thing for me is, I enjoy covering the Irish women's team, but at the end of the day, for me and you, our bread and butter is the League of Ireland. That's our bread and butter. That's where we get most of our enjoyment from. And I think a strong League of Ireland definitely helps for us. And couple of weeks, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have managerial appointments. We'll have all that sort of stuff. But I think it's going to be a really, really hectic off season. I think in terms of squads, clubs, player movements, managerial movements. I think there's so much happening at the minute.
Yeah, I did get a contact back from James O'Callaghan during the week. He went to ground for a week or so, but he's back out now. So we'll maybe have a chat with him, and we'll have a bit more maybe about why he's left Piedmont, if he's going somewhere else. All of that will be revealed in due course, I would imagine, probably by the time we have our next show. We will have 2 final shows in the season this year, both around those 2 fixtures against Wales, once in the build-up and once afterwards. Let's talk about that game just before we wrap up. Who's going to feature in that game for you? We have to pick our strongest 11. Everything good, all injuries aside. Who makes that starting 11 for you in wherever it happens to be in Wales? I'm not sure if it's the.
I think it's in the Cardiff City Stadium.
Who makes that? Brosnan is pretty much nailed.
Brosnan's nailed on. Right wing back is probably a position that's, for me, I don't mean to sound bad when I say this. She's had a great international window. Abby's had a great international window. But for me, the right wing back position has to go back to Heather Payne. She's now back fit. She was in the squad. I'm surprised she didn't sort of start either of the 2 games, considering she'd missed the previous 2 through injury. You'd expect probably the back three to be Patton, Hayes, and Mannion, unless if Quinn's fit, would they put Quinn back in potentially? Then you're looking at obviously Katie on the other side, midfield. Denise will definitely be there. I think there's a little bit of wiggle room to who goes in there with Denise. Tyler played 1, Jessie played 1. You've obviously got Marissa playing 1. I think it's difficult to know what she's going to do there. I think Ciara and Julianne will definitely start. I think there's probably 3 or 4 places that are not necessarily nailed down in terms of positions, but I definitely think Courtney in goal will be also nailed. So it's difficult to know what she's going to do, because Eileen Gleeson on one day could do one thing and the very next day she could do something completely different.
Does Jacobson have a shout on the left wing and maybe Katie playing more quarter advanced?
No, I can't imagine. I think if they're going to do that, they'll probably do what they done this week, where Julianne sort of slipped into that left wing back, and Katie to go further forward if they're going to do that. But I can't imagine Izzy would start again.
Okay, but there is a bit of wiggle room in that starting 11. But you think it's pretty much nailed down? I wouldn't disagree with anything you've said there, to be honest. I think it's fairly nailed down. I think that centre midfield 3 is going to be interesting. It's probably the biggest talking point of the next month.
I don't mean to sound bad, but if Russia Littlejohn and Megan Connolly are fit, I wouldn't play either of them.
I would probably agree with you as well on that score. But again, they are favourites of we're going to say Vera there for a second. They were favourites of Vera too, or at least for a while.
I wouldn't be shocked if Jessie Stapleton starts that game in Cardiff. I wouldn't be shocked at all if she starts that game in the 6.
Has Marissa Shiva done enough to be in the consideration?
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. I think Marissa can go back to Portland and score a goal or 2, and get a good couple of minutes in these couple of weeks. I think Marissa probably puts herself in a position where a good training week that week, and she's probably 50-50.
Yeah, I think the pace she brings potentially, maybe not quite as physically involved as the others, particularly Jessie, but I think the pace she brings is an asset that we haven't really utilized much. We saw how quick she was to react for that goal eventually that was scored by Julianne in the second leg on Tuesday night. Anyway, that is it for this week. We're pretty much out of time. Really interesting conversation about, I suppose, the governance and the structures and maybe some of the concepts in terms of the business side of the game as well. And I think that's something we might chat about more as we go forward on the podcast. Aaron, what are you up to for the next couple of weeks? What are you going to fill your weekends with?
Hiding away from football. Hiding away from football. I am going to Cardiff. It's all booked and all. I am going to Cardiff. I'm thinking about trying to throw a championship game in as well when I go to Cardiff. Cardiff City are at home on the Wednesday evening. I fly Wednesday midday. Cardiff City are at home to QPR on the Wednesday night. So that might fit in as an extra game of football. But other than that, there'll be no football between now and the Ireland game.
I tell you, if you get a chance, rent a car and head up to Wrexham, because it's a great day out if you can get to a game. If you can get a ticket, that's probably the hardest part. You're probably more luck getting an away ticket to Wrexham these days. Aaron, that's it for this week. We will be back ahead of that qualifier. Of course, that game happens on the 29th of November. We'll be back that week with a preview once the squad is out.
And we should also have the likes of the League of Ireland Player of the Year and all that sort of stuff by that stage as well to go through and sort of dissect our opinions.
Yeah, who do you think is in the running for that?
Well, you know, I'm going to say who should win it. I would love to win it. I would love to see Maggie Pearce win it. I think it'll be an Athlone player. I wouldn't be shocked if it's someone like a Maddie Gibson or like Maddie Gibson and Roisin Malloy being the best two Athlone players for me. Be interesting to see what they go with the final nominations.
Katie Keane have us outside shot?
No, I'd say she's probably very close to Young Player of the Year, though, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think for me, she's the biggest addition to Athlone over the last 18 months. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Anyway, that is it for the week. We'll be back with you in about 3 weeks' time to preview those two games against Wales, and that'll be it for us for this season. Thanks very much to all the fans for joining us this year. We've really appreciated it as the numbers have grown steadily through the season. We do appreciate any feedback as well, so do let us know your thoughts on social media. Aaron is at the WNL show, and you can always get us here at Final Whistle IE on all of our socials. Other than that, we'll be back with you again in a couple of weeks. Talk to you then.